Hello humans, and welcome to the first guide for Fire Emblem Engage. There are a lot of things I want to talk about, but I guess one of the first things that came to me was to talk about forging, because I feel like that's probably the most important investment that you can do early on in the game. So basically, once you unlock the Somniel, which is around or after Chapter 4, I think, you come to the smithy here. I'm not sure exactly when the smithy unlocks. It's pretty early in the game. It's like Chapter 4, 5, or 6 or something like that. But anyways, the way things work in Engage is that weapons don't have durability anymore. What you can do is that you can refine them and forge them, and there's a certain level of progression to these weapons. Now, there probably won't be any spoilers in this video. I'm gonna try and censor out as much of the character icons as possible on the weapon equipment screen, so you probably won't have to worry about any spoilers aside from the weapons themselves and what they go into, and I'll go ahead and explain that in a very detailed way. So in a nutshell, the way forging works is there are 3 different types of materials that you're going to use. There are iron ingots, steel ingots, and silver ingots. And just as a little quick hack, the best way to get these that I've found so far, there might be a more efficient way, but if you adopt a lot of dogs along the way and just put 5 dogs in your farm in the Somniel, they will be able to drop silver ingots relatively frequently. Like, I'm getting 2 or 3 per chapter. So that's just a little bit of a quick go-ahead guide for that. But now let's dive into the weapons. So, in Fire Emblem, usually we have different tiers of weapons, and then there are certain weapons that are different. So the interesting thing about the Forge here is that certain weapons are able to level up in sort of a weapon tree sort of deal. And I'll show you that with swords. We'll start off with the swords, for example. So here you can see in forging, it's different materials to level up each weapon, and it can go up to a +5. Every single weapon in this game can go up to a +5, and it costs money and materials. And the more advanced the weapon is, the more money it costs and the more material it costs to level up. But, as you can see right here at the bottom, you can go into another weapon of sorts. Now, I'm not going to waste any of my materials here because I'll want to show you some of the things later on, but if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, it says Might 5, Hit 90, Weight 5, Dodge 0. And that Slim Sword is going to turn into a different weapon, and I already know what this is. It's an Iron Sword, but just to go ahead and compare, you can tell that the base Iron Sword here has Might 5, Hit 90, Weight 5, Dodge 0. So that sort of correlates. So the Slim Sword is able to get enhanced into an Iron Sword. The Iron Sword itself goes to +5 as usual, and I'm going to stop repeating this because a lot of this is going to be self-explanatory, but the Iron Sword has 3 different branches. Iron, in general, will go to steel, which is this first option here, but the next 2 are a little bit less clear. You can see with this one that it has the armor effectiveness icon on it, and that means that this is an armor slayer. And then the weapon below it, you can see with the 30 crit and the 9 might, this is a killing edge. So Iron Sword can go into steel sword, Armor Slayer, or Killing Edge. Now, if we go on to the next tier, which is the Steel Sword itself, let's say you moved from Iron to Steel and you want to see what the Steel can go into, again, you have another 3 choices. This one, again, the first tier from Steel up would be Silver. This weapon here is 1-2 range. This is a Levin Sword. I have one, I already know, and you can also see from the little squiggly, jagged nature of it, if you've played Smash Bros and you remember how Robin's Levin Sword looks like, that's what this is. And then the weapon on the tier below it with the 20 crit and the 6 might is the Wo Dao. Now let's go to the next tier up from Steel, which is Silver. Silver also has 2 more branching paths. This bottom one here, you can tell with the Dragon Effectiveness, is a Worm Slayer, and the one above it is a Brave Sword. And that's it. That's as far as this skill tree goes from what I can see. And you can see I have all these weapons here. I've got an Armor Slayer, a Levin Sword, a Wo Dao, a couple of them, a Worm Slayer. And then we have sort of the blade weapons. Now, the blade weapons are the smash weapons in this game, and applying across the board to lances and axes, I actually can't remember if lances have this, but axes and swords have these. And these aren't very interesting at all. They just go from iron to steel to silver, and that's where it bottoms out. And then we have the sort of unique weapons, which are Liberation, and Liberation just goes to +5. You can see that on your own. And Folkvanger, which is Alphonse's sword, also just goes to +5. These are solid weapons. It doesn't mean you shouldn't turn them into +5s, but they do get very expensive. And one thing I want to show is the Worm Slayer, because it's one of the... Oh, actually, it's not very expensive. But the Silver Sword, for example, to max forge a Silver Sword, you will need, it looks like, 38 pieces of silver ore. So it's very, very expensive to forge them. The first couple enhancements, I would say, are worth it. Once you go into the +3, 4, and 5, I think you would really only want to forge this that high if you are using the weapon a lot. Anyways, in the sake of time, let's go over this for the other weapons. I'm going to fly through these because I don't want this guide to be very long. In terms of the lances, there is a slim lance. I think I sold mine, but slim goes to iron. Iron here goes into steel, the Rider's Bane, and the Killer Lance. You're just going to have to take my word for this. It makes sense. Horse effectiveness, crit 30. The Steel Lance over here will go into silver, and this is a Flame Lance, which is kind of like the alternate to the Levin Sword. It's 1-2 range, and it's magic-based. And then we have the Silver Lance, which goes only into the Brave Lance here. Not very creative weapon chain, unfortunately, but that's it. I think I already said, oh no, I didn't. The Javelin goes into the Spear, which is a great 1-2 range weapon for the lances. And then we have sort of, again, just to see the Rider's Bane, the Killer Lance. These all are uniques, they just go into +5s, and I was wrong. Lances do have a smash weapon, which is the Great Lance that also goes from iron to steel to silver. I've already pre-tested all these, by the way, so you can just trust me on it. All of the final chain weapons, which would be sort of the Flame Lance and the Silver Lance, all those things, that's it. That's where they stop. They go to +5 from there. They don't have any more branches as far as I know. Axes are the same thing. The compact axe is basically a slim axe, which is actually quite an interesting addition to Engage. It goes from compact to iron. Iron here, again, splits off into the Killer Axe, the Hammer, and the Steel Axe, as we can see. The Steel Axe goes into the Silver Axe and the Pole Axe. The Hammer class is interesting because it's the only class that has both armor and horse effectiveness. I'm kind of surprised they didn't put the Heavy Spear in or the Zanbato, but they just didn't as far as I can see so far. A little bit weird, but I guess that's one thing that hammers have over swords and lances, outside of the abysmal hit rates. And the Silver Axe goes into the Brave Axe and the Hurricane Axe, which is the magic-based axe. It's only 1 range, and it's effective against flyers because flyers are weak to wind. And the Hand Axe goes into the Tomahawk. The Tomahawk is actually really interesting in this game. It's very heavy, and it has a low hit rate, but I have one, and if you enhance it to +5, the might goes up, the weight stays the same, and the hit rate goes up. So it's actually not a bad weapon, though it is very expensive to enhance. So, I don't know. I like the Tomahawk idea. I do have a Brave Axe that I got from... you do get weapons as a reward for investing in your regions. I don't think this is worth investing more than maybe level 3 in a region, because after that it gets very expensive and you'd probably rather just use your money on forging instead. And then we have the Great Axe series. Again, it just goes into steel and then silver. And here you can see I have the Hurricane Axe. It is a magical axe, and it is very strong. 25 might and 80 hit. Probably one of the strongest weapons in the game, especially if you have a high magic stat on your axe user. And then, of course, we have Anna's Axe, the Noaton. I forgot to talk about the Fensilier for Sharina, but again, self-explanatory. Now we get to the bows. Once again, Mini Bow goes into Iron Bow. And then Iron Bow goes into Steel and Killer Bow. And the Steel Bow goes into the Silver Bow and the Long Bow. The Long Bow is very good in this game. Very, very useful, especially with flyer effectiveness, and flyers are pretty prevalent. And the Silver Bow goes into the Brave Bow, which is this one, and the Radiant Bow, which is the magic alternative of the bow series. Again, bows haven't been very creative. I have them here: Long Bow, Killer Bow, and Radiant Bow, and Silver Bow. The only thing I'm missing is the Brave Bow, which I could make from the Silver Bow if I really wanted to. I just don't feel the imminent or immediate need to do that right now. Magic is a little bit of a disappointment in terms of the forging. They made a very nice addition to Magic in this game, which is Surge, which is a 1-range spell, which I really like. Unfortunately, Surge just goes into L Surge, which is this one, and that's it. And then L Surge goes to +5. So they didn't really do a tier 3 magic for Surge, but they did for Fire, Thunder, and Wind. So Fire goes into L Fire, and then subsequently L Fire will go into Bolganon. Same thing with Thunder. Thunder will go into L Thunder, and then I do not have an L Thunder, so for the sake of this video, I'm going to use resources. And then L Thunder will go into Thoron, which is 1 to 3 range, very strong spell, kind of inaccurate. So if you're gonna forge it, you should probably forge that one up. And then we have Wind goes into L Wind, and L Wind will go into Excalibur, which is pretty good, good against flyers. And that's pretty much it for the tomes. I haven't seen any long-range tomes yet, no meteor or bolting or any of that regards. And there's also no ice magic in this game, which is kind of odd, unless they are considering Surge to be the water base. I don't know. Anyways, range weapons are kind of dull in this game. Same thing goes for the daggers. You've got the long-range daggers, which is this chain, and then you've got the one-range daggers with high crit, which is this chain. So basically, short knife goes into iron dagger goes into steel goes into silver, and then silver just kind of stops there. And that's really pretty much it. The card is the first tier of the high crit one-range daggers, and card goes into stiletto, and stiletto goes into pesh cats. That's really it for daggers. There's no fancy effects, no effectiveness, nothing. It's just 1-2 range daggers, and they all do poison, which increases damage against foes and stacks up to 3, which is a very interesting mechanic, especially for killing bosses. I'm really enjoying dagger units in this game, but their forging options are a little bit tired. I mean, the swords, the lances, and the axes have the most interesting ones. The bows are kind of interesting, but once we get into sort of the tomes, the daggers, and especially the fists, not interesting at all. Fists are really a one-chain thing. Initiate goes into steel, which I don't have, or iron, sorry, I do have iron. Iron goes into steel, and you're just gonna have to trust me on this, that steel only goes directly into silver. I don't have one, but it just does. Just believe me, okay? Oh no, actually, I'm gonna have to waste it on steel. Don't trust me on that, because steel then can go into shielding or silver. So that's the only branching you have with the sort of punching arts. So they're here, silver and shielding. Silver can then go into something called Radiant, or Flashing Fist, sorry. And Flashing Fist is really, really strong. This is basically the end game weapon for fist weapons, and it's also really cheap to get to +5. So if you have any fist people, you want to get this weapon. I mean, look, you can get to the max tier with 150 iron, 50 steel, and only 5 silver. It's crazy. And this is basically, I think it's a brave weapon, unless that's, yeah, it's a brave weapon. None of the other fist arts have this description, which is if user initiate combat, it attacks twice, and they also get speed +5. The weight is 9, which is a little bit on the heavy side, but I think by the time you get this late game, it's not bad, and it's also got 14 might and 90 hits, so it's very accurate. No crit, no dodge, no avoid, it's just straight up power, and it gives you 5 speed. So that's the very interesting art for fists. This is sort of your end game art. You should definitely use this. But other than that, that's pretty much it for fists. They have shielding, which is nice if you're gonna use the, I mean, I guess their class art isn't even really important. The chain guard or whatever it is, the shield that they have, you don't even need the defense +5 for that because it just does a percentage of your max HP anyways. So I don't know why they gave it defense +5. Those fist classes I haven't really explored, and classes are something I might want to look into a little bit deeper and do a guide on in the future. But that's pretty much it for forging. Nothing really crazy, but it's a nice little guide for you to know sort of, I guess, your class progression or weapon progression, for lack of a better word. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you guys in another video very, very soon. Let me know what you think about this guide and whether it was helpful or not. And yeah, enjoy Engage. Peace.